So thank you, Christian. Next up, we have Toke Lund, CEO of Interspeed, talking about the benefits of decoupled data. So please give him a big round of applause.
Thank you.
Sounds great.
Thank you, guys. While setting up, I will just introduce myself. So my name is Toke. I'm the CEO of Interspeed. And what we have built is what we call the speed layer. And we would like to show you today a little bit about the benefit of having a speed layer, and also show you some actual code and some perspective in actually having this product on your sites. Together with me on the stage, we have Emil, who's my CTO. And I think we are ready, right?
Yep.
Good. So what are we going to show you today is the agenda here is that why was Interspeed born? What is the value gained by having a speed layer in front to decouple your infrastructure? And then also talking a little bit about speed layer with a low coupling, that's the demo. And then we end up with some quite interesting perspective on actually working with Interspeed, but we will see that in the end. First of all, there's two reasons why Interspeed was born. First reason, speed. Because speed really matters. You probably know it better than me. There's been a lot of different investigations, research all over the world. Speed improves conversion rates. Speed improves your bounce rate. And by the way, it puts you higher on the marketing side. So speed really matters. Second reason why Interspeed was born was that 6 years ago, I was heading up the e-commerce challenge in the largest retailer in Scandinavia called Salling Group. That was back in the days when SAP Hybris was the key motor of e-commerce. It was a big fat monolith in the center. And it was before SAP realized that you commit nemesis and then Hybris come to kick you in the ass. But the one thing that I realized back then, 6 years ago, was one true thing, and that's the next one. That is, good old Charles Darwin was right about one thing. It's not the strongest of the species that survived, nor the most intelligent, but the ones most responsive to change. If you're running a monolith, you're not very responsive to change. We need to find other ways to how to decouple your infrastructure, work more on component. That's all the topic of this summit, is to actually to talk about composable DXP or composable being composable. We talk it much more about decoupling, and there's a reason for that. Because the core of the sentence here is agility, and agility is on the agenda all over the place. Regardless of you talk headless, composable, decouple IT infrastructure, it's on the agenda. And you probably talk it with all your clients in all the companies out there, how can we get more agile? But basically, agility requires two components. First of all, separation of concerns. Secondly, fast access to data. And we want to provide everybody with exactly this. And that's why we have built Interspeed, and that's why we have built our speed layer to deliver high performance and high agility. And give you, as developers, the power to build the solutions that is necessary for the business that you're working with. That's why we're here today, and that's what we're going to show a little bit on how you can do it. Next slide. So, what have we actually built? We have built a system, and it's a very complex slide, and it will be even complex in a minute when I push the next button. But just a short explanation. If we start on the right-hand side, that's where the value is created. You need to be really fast in all the touch points, all the UIs that is out there. But it depends on the backend systems that you actually have. So what we have built is an engine where you can ingest all sorts of data sources. As long as it can give a JSON blob, we can actually ingest it into the Interspeed product. Once we have ingested it, we have made a low-code schema where we are actually transforming the data. That gets a lot of benefits in transforming the data out of the backend systems, but that's where we're actually starting to say, how do we want to utilize the data afterwards? Once you have told or manipulated the data inside the transformation layer, we know exactly how you want to use the data. And once we know how to use the data, we can kick it in the ass and accelerate it really, really fast. What does that mean? It means that we can store it, prepare it, and make it available just below the surface. And you don't need a hydration of your cache to make it available and so on. We have just make sure that it's available at all times at first hit just below the surface. That can deliver a fast time to first byte. And by the way, you can see some gray areas. We can also push it towards all the Asia storage centers around the world. So if you are building a site in Asia, like one of our first clients was, they needed to fetch data for layers. So they are fetching data out of Southeast Asia. So we can actually push it around the world to make sure that you have the data extremely fast, close to where you need it. And if I should then talk a little bit about what are the actually USP. So we are multi-source and tech agnostic. We don't care whether it's Sitecore, it's Umbraco, we don't care whether you're using Struct, Parafion, or InRiver, or whatever. And we don't care about if you are on a version 7 or a 9. That's really key. So if you have legacy data here, we can actually help make modern experiences based on legacy data. We do effective decoupling because you're pushing data towards us, and then you take care of the data transformation afterwards. We are building this on low code, so front-enders should actually be able to build their own APIs. That's truly important to us, to make sure that everybody can build their own APIs. We do the data transformation outside the core, outside the backend systems. And because we store it, you can actually turn off the backend systems. That's quite important for us. I know that back from the Salling Group, that's actually crucial to be able to perform without having to take all the system and the experiences down. There's global scalability, and we can deliver high time to first byte, fast time to first byte. We'll show that to you in a minute. Some of you might say, we can build this ourselves, but I will just challenge you a little bit. Hands up, how many of you have been building your own CMS within the last 15 years? At least once. So you basically all have done it, or most of you, right? Everybody are trying to do something. Then Umbraco came along and said, wow, they do it much smarter than me, so maybe I should do something different. I would argue that you could probably do some of the same elements on a speed layer yourself. But please remember, regardless if you call it custom BFF or speed layer or whatever we call it, you can do some of it yourself, but it requires an extensive amount of work. And we hope by the end of today, you can sit down and say, maybe I should look at Interspeed and say, they could do most of the things that I would like to do. So why not take them instead of building it ourselves? Basically, that was it for me. I will come back a little bit later. Emil, take over.
Thank you, Toke. I'm going to talk a little about decoupling and using Interspeed as a speed layer. But before, I'm going to take a small trip down memory lane about some of my code gardens that are actually leading up to what we have done with Interspeed. My first code garden was in 2016. I attended a workshop about load balancing in Umbraco. And that was basically how you would do it at that time. If you wanted some more scale, you needed to support a massive amount of visitors. A couple of years later, one of the projects I was a co-architect on, won an Umbraco award, where we were working, maybe you can see it, we were working on headless and multiple data sources. So this is back in 2018. And you could argue this is exactly the same thing I'm doing now. So this is what I'm going to talk a bit about. Here we have an architectural drawing of a typical composable technology stack. And there's a couple of things I want to highlight. We have a server-side rendered front end, and in this example, we have a custom backend for front end. And one of the things that might be a bit tricky in one of those is in our backend systems, we have our product information management system that a common way to get that data loaded onto your web pages is to insert that into Umbraco, and then Umbraco becomes your content hub. I would probably guess most of you guys have done something similar. The other thing I want to highlight is that we have Umbraco here, and when you want to support a lot of users, you need to scale that. That's coming back to then you need some load balancing to actually make it fast for when you have a lot of visitors. So by implementing a speed layer, you achieve some benefits. And one of the benefits is that you, like, from an architectural perspective, decouple your different systems, not only for your front end, but also the various parts, so don't get everything piped into Umbraco, and when you need to upgrade it, there's lots of pain involved in actually handling all of that details. Another thing is that you also, on the operational side, decouple your back-end system. So, as Toke said, you can actually turn them off, and you can maintain them and do all sorts of things in the back-end. So, both from an architectural point of view and from an operational point of view, you have decoupling. I noticed some of the other elements in this composable stack. We have Algolia for searching, for instance. It could be well-advised with recommendations. And you also have a commerce engine. Those parts are still highly dynamic, and they deliver data for that specific user. So we, of course, still need those parts to communicate with that. But with something like, with an abstraction as Interspeed, a speed layer, then you can use that as also pushing your data to some of the other components that you have in your stack. Again, lowering the amount of direct integrations you actually need to do. So I will move on and do yet another live demo in here, and we'll see how that works. First of all, I just need to make sure I actually have some network, otherwise we'll be in a horrible place. That seems to work. Cool. And I'll just need to log into my Umbraco. Yeah, we have that one.
You need to change over to the demo.
I need to change over to the demo. So, just a second. We have this stop mirroring stuff. Where do we have this one? Just a sec.
In the meantime, any questions? Fully understand it? No, I don't. I'm just kidding.
Yep.
Ready?
So, here I have a Umbraco. And this is a plain Umbraco. I've done two things. I installed some demo content, and I installed the Interspeed source integration. Let me just pull up the settings. In the settings, you can configure Interspeed. Relatively simple. We have two API keys, one for the published data and one for the draft data. And this also is what we have over in Interspeed. I have a source group, and here you see the Interspeed interface, and I've created two sources. And we'll just see here that currently we don't have any source entities. When we insert the content into Umbraco, into Interspeed from Umbraco, we call it source entities. That's basically the nodes we have here. So what I do now is I'm going to publish. So for the content editors, this is completely transparent. You're using Interspeed. So right now in the background, we are sending all of the data we have in Umbraco, and we are pushing that to Interspeed. And with a bit of luck, we have some data here. And with some more luck, we also have a running website. We just have to probably wait a bit, because what actually happens behind the scenes is that we are processing all of this data. In a handful of seconds, we'll take the data, match it up, and prepare it to be served. I'm going into details of that. Let me see if my patience pays off. Yes, it is. So, the first thing I want to demo and highlight is that if I change something in my CMS, then it's being pushed to, and I think this would be HL Jensen, that is the author of these ones. And when I update that, we'll also update that on our source entities in Umbraco. And here, we'll update that in Interspeed. So it's being pushed to Interspeed. And then we have it over here. And one thing that's important to note is that we are constantly updating that data in multiple delivery regions. So we don't need any user to come by in a normal proxy cache. Then you need a user to come by and have a cache mesh before we can actually get some data generated. And we generate it before, so regardless if you're the first that requests that endpoint or you're the second one, you get the same performance. So how does Interspeed then actually work? Here I have a schema, and let me just strip this down to make it as simple as possible. A schema is where you define how your data should look on your front end, and this is also where you map your data from your source entities to your endpoint. So let me just deploy this, and I can then in Interspeed see what are the generated views. And a view is what we call when you take the source entity, put it through the schema with the data model, and then we generate a view. And all of these are then ready to be served in our delivery layer. Now, these are very simple and doesn't do anything, but just for demo purposes, it shows what actually goes on behind the scenes. So I'll just put this one back. We can see I can map a headline attribute I want in my API to a page title that is in my source entities. And we also can take the blog editors we have from Umbraco. And since the editors can put whatever content they want, it could be a hero, it could be image, a button, whatever that actually put in there for the from the content editors, we need a way to map that. This is why we use something we call partial. We also have a way if your data structure is exactly if your data structure in your source entities is exactly as you want them on your API, we also have a way to do dynamic mapping, so you can simply just pass through whatever you have. But let me just validate that everything works. So the first thing I'm going to do is to peek into my data source and see, okay, if I can't remember what the properties are, I can look at them here. I can validate that everything works by testing it. And that seems to work. So let me just save it and deploy it yet again. Yes. So that's how Interspeed works from a basic point of view. Where it becomes really interesting when we get to work with multiple data sources. And let me just demo that now. In my imaginary fairy tale shop, I want to have a list of job openings. And those job openings actually situate in my HR system, where people can follow the link from my website and then go to a third-party system and then apply for those jobs. But I don't want to maintain those jobs, both in Umbraco and in my HR system, so I just simply want to use the data I already have in my HR system. So this is what I'm going to demo now. Let me first just see how this looks when I don't have any jobs inserted. This is basically the same thing and you guys can see all right here from Insomnia. Yes, awesome. So this is the same thing as I did before. The top part is the same schema as I had before. But notice that we have the jobs property here right now that's empty. So what I'm going to do is to insert some data into a different data source. So in Interspeed, I created this demo HR system. And now I'm going to insert some data into this one. And the way this works is that we have a piece of JSON. So Interspeed in the ingest API can take whatever JSON that you have that comes from your sources, and we'll just mirror that in the Interspeed side. And we have a couple of headers and API key, so we can put it in the right source. You can give it a URL, and we have this only required header is the source entity type, so we know what kind of thing it is, and you can refer to that. I'll get back to that in a second. So let me just send those two pieces of jobs into Interspeed, and I'll go into Interspeed, and I'll just show you what then happens in this schema. So I have a jobs page schema, and this is the part that we saw before, and here we get to the job section. So what happens here is I created this property, and for the input, I'm using the lookup feature, and this is a way where you can query the data that's already in Interspeed. And here we say we want to have all of the source entities that match this filter, and we want this to the source entity type job. And down here, we'll say this is the data model I want to expose on my API. So with a bit of luck, I can then go back to Insomnia, and we can actually see how we get that we now have one API request that delivers all of the data I need to generate my site. And especially if you have a server-side rendered application, having a fast response time getting only one API request and getting a fast response time is crucial, because you want to deliver that fast server response time, and so you can give that the user experience that are driving all those business metrics that Toke talked about before. And let me also see if I can just briefly run a quick little test. Let me just clear everything up here so you can see. So I'm going to now send 2,000 requests to Interspeed, and in around 5 or 6 seconds, of course, depending on the Interspeed connect or the internet connection I have, then we'll see that we actually get some pretty decent response times. And with a bit of luck, yeah, we are having an average. The internet is not. I think we'd like to have something around 60 milliseconds or so. That's pretty much the budget you have if you want to deliver some fast. Right here on this connection with all those people, it's a bit lacking. But anyway, that's to demo the performance also of Interspeed. Yes, let me see if I can get back onto my presentation. Yes, so far so good.
Yes.
Back to you, Toke.
So basically what you have experienced now is that you can insert all kind of data, push it towards us, and start building the UI or use it wherever you want to need it in the other end. But with capabilities of speed, resilience as the most two important ones. So what are the perspectives in working with a speed layer like this? First of all, and I sound a little bit like Donald Trump, but making legacy great again. We know for a fact that there's a lot of technical debt out there that you need to struggle with and handle on a daily basis. This is the opportunity to take some of that legacy sources, push it towards us, and build new front ends on top. But you don't need to change the whole backend. You can actually work on some of the old stuff. The other thing that Emil quickly mentioned is that once we have all the data in our layer, we can push it towards other services like Algolia for search or Loop 54, whatever we have. There's a quick implementation, and we have some documentation on how to push it towards those services. And then within a few hours, you can actually build a new search experience for your customers. And we know a good search experience can actually create a big conversion rate. And then the last thing, which we find really, really interesting, is that because we actually store the data, and you can push legacy data from us, you can actually use us as a migration engine. In Norwegian, they call it a data pump. It sounds more sexy than a migration bus. But consider using us as a migration bus could actually be quite interesting. Because we can take sources like legacy sources and migrate them into new and more modern sources. Let me give you just a small movie on what you can achieve within a short period of time with this. Over to you, Emil.
Yes, so now the movie is running, and what you see here is Sidecore, and where we're going to take the data from Sidecore and put that into Umbraco. We have a Sidecore source integration as well, and that's installed in this Sidecore installation. And when you publish anything, exactly as we saw before from Umbraco, we're going to push that into Interspeed. And having all of that data from the source in Interspeed, it allows us to use that somewhere else, of course. And what we can do now is in Interspeed, we have created some schemas that annotates the data structure, so we know what kind of document type it is, and we know what kind of data it is. And this actually allows us to recreate the structure in an Umbraco. So we have what we call the Interspeed migrator, and right now what's happening is that we're actually importing the data structure that we have from Sidecore and recreating that with the document types in Umbraco. Of course, it's a bit rough, it's the same icons and so on and so forth, but you can, since doesn't really make sense to do that automatically. We can easily go in and refine this, but we have done a lot of the actual quant work in creating the structure. And as the same thing as we can create the structure, we can of course also import the content, because we already know the structure and we know how to map that. So simply by annotating the data that is in Interspeed, we can query Interspeed, get all of the pages, get the structure, and then have that imported into, in this case, Umbraco. This also works if you want to migrate from a previous version of Umbraco. So with this, we have a lot of the plumbing that's already done by the components that is in the Interspeed, like source integrations, and then with these Interspeed migrator things. And yeah, please do. Yeah, it's really cool. This way to actually get that data out there. And the components is available in our GitHub page. The Sidecore integration, we have that as open source, and the same as the Umbraco migration. That's also available on GitHub. So yeah, please go check that out. A last couple of things. Also a bit about what are we looking for in the future with Interspeed. Some of the questions that we get asked a lot, so I'm going to anticipate some of the questions for later for the Ask the Speakers. What about GraphQL? And yes, GraphQL is something that we are actively looking at, and we are really excited about the opportunities about taking some very dynamic data, because it can be anything that can be pushed to Interspeed, and creating schemas on top of that, so you can query them via GraphQL and with the strongly typed versions. Oh, another question we get asked is, what about a CI/CD pipeline? Can we integrate this into how we deploy our websites? And yes, that is something we are working on a CLI, so you can actually use Interspeed as a part of your CI/CD pipeline. And for the last part, over to you, Toke.
Yeah, basically, go try it out. We love as many customers as possible and as many developers trying it out. So the magic and the moment of truth happens when you start to actually pushing data towards our layer. It's free for a trial, so please go on interspeed.com, sign up for a trial and test it out. And if you have any questions at all, please feel free to reach out. You can read some of our documentations. You can go to GitHub and get more of some of the boilerplates we have done. We have done some boilerplates on the front ends as well, if you need to go to test that out as well. So please go test it out. If you have any questions, then let us know. We are ready to say thank you for listening in, and I hope this was okay exciting. Thank you.
Thank you. I have something for you as well. I think it's this one.